Everyone, we have Becca Schroeder here with us, and she's going to share her family's journey. Becca, tell us about your family. Tell us where you live. Do you have other children? Like, what was the scenario when you were first diagnosed with CDH?
Yes, so hi everyone. I'm very excited to be here. Yeah, so we live in Chicago, Illinois, and just have one daughter. And it actually took us several years to get pregnant with her. We struggled with infertility, um, lots of things going on there. So it took us about 2.5 years to actually conceive. And then we were diagnosed with CDH at her 20-week ultrasound. I had actually invited my sister and my mother to come up to be with us, just to kind of be a part of our journey. This has just been exciting. I'm the youngest in my family, and everybody was convinced that we just weren't going to have kids, and because we like to just travel, and it's just been, my husband and I just really enjoy that, and so didn't think we were ever going to have kids, but we did. And so they were there in the room with us when our wonderful doctor came in and asked them to step out for a few moments. And she proceeded to tell us that it looked like our daughter had CDH. She brought us that scary diagram that has all of the organs misplaced, up into the chest cavity, and she just kind of explained what it meant. And we were referred to fetal specialists at Lurie Children's Hospital. And so, well, actually, I guess it was the Northwestern Memorial Hospital. And then, so it's the Chicago Institute for Fetal Health is where we went and had more testing done. Again, I feel like this is the story that everyone has, is we had no idea what those three little letters meant and had never heard of it before. And it was terrifying. I remember leaving that appointment in shock and not really knowing what was going on. We were thankfully able to get an appointment that afternoon with the fetal specialists, and they were able to go ahead and do more of the testing. We were able to see them and talk to them, and it was a little scary because for a little while they actually could not find the left branch pulmonary artery at all, so for her lungs, and so we weren't even sure if she had even the potential to have lungs. So we left all these appointments just heartbroken, which I feel like is the answer for the thing that just happens with everyone. So yeah, so we were launched into the world of CDH, and we were fortunate enough to find CDH International and able to connect with other families through the Facebook groups. And it was a journey for sure. It was terrifying, but we ended up deciding to stay here in the city. I know there's so many decisions to make when you receive this diagnosis. Do you move somewhere? Do you, what do you need to look for, and what groups do you need to be a part of, and things. And we just decided that Lurie was where we needed to be. And that's, fortunately we live within 20 minutes of the hospital. So we weren't thrown into the chaos that is so many other people's stories. And so we started seeing the team at Lurie. We got to go meet with Dr. Shaban and the entire team at Lurie. Gosh, I remember sitting in that table, and that looks like a boardroom with like 15 people that had clipboards and iPads, and just terrifying. And all of this information was just being spouted at us. And my husband is an information person, and he loved every bit of it. He takes it all in, and I was just completely overwhelmed. I mean, we left the hospital, we left that meeting with him telling us that our daughter had an 85% chance of survival, which, if you were playing slots or something, that's probably pretty good odds. But the only thing I heard was that my daughter had a 15% chance of dying. So not what you want to hear. Yeah, so we left that meeting with that information, and we were processing. I ended up going the opposite of my husband. He joined all the groups and wanted all the support, and I just needed to just be in myself for a little while and just process. It's how I've always been. I'm very internal, which is interesting because my husband's the introvert and I'm the extrovert. So just for me, I needed to just kind of be alone. And yeah, so we just it was a lot to process. So she we ended up having our second appointment with, so we had 2 appointments total with the whole big scary team. The second one was closer to our delivery date. She was originally due September 31st or September 30th of 2018. And that was her due date, her projected due date. We knew going in that we were going to be induced close to the 37-week mark. So I went in for my last appointment at 30, actually the day of my 37 weeks. They were hoping to keep her into like a little bit longer, but they discovered that she had, we were losing like amniotic fluid. There was less fluid. And so they were worried, they were concerned about high drops and some other things. And they were like, so I went to that appointment by myself thinking it was just going to be a quick thing. And then they ended up telling me that they were, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. The second appointment with the CIFH people was the Chicago Institute of Fetal Health. They told me that her lung volume was lower than they originally thought. You know, originally they couldn't even find the lungs, the left, specifically the left branch pulmonary artery. And then they were able to find it, but it was lower. It was smaller than they thought it should be. And her chances went from 85% to 70 to 75%. So it's like it kept getting worse. And then, so that was even worse. And then just maybe a month later, we went in for, I was doing like weekly stress tests, non-stress tests. And so I was going to the doctors like twice a week. And then on the day of my 37-week appointment, we scheduled the induction for the following week. And they ended up calling me back and telling me that the ultrasound had showed that she was, there was less amniotic fluid. And so they were a little worried about high drops. And so they basically told me that day that I went into my normal just like appointment and I leave. And then I get a phone call, hey, don't be terrified, but we need you to come back in. We need to go ahead and just get her out and go ahead and induce you. And yeah, so I knew that I remember telling my husband, I was like, here we go. This is going to be literally the fight of our lives. And so he rushed home and we drove to the hospital, called our parents who were in Kentucky, and pretty sure they broke lots of speed laws and getting up here. And that's when it began. She was born on September 1st of 2018. And, you know, they prepared me for her to not be able to cry, to not make any noise at all, because she, you know, wouldn't have the lung capacity to do that, and that she would be taken immediately to be intubated and stabilized, or bagged and stabilized. And then if she's doing well, they would bring her back and at least let me see her. And then if not, they were just going to rush her straight over. And, you know, just we walked through kind of like the birth plan with that. Like my husband, Jeff was going to go be with her and I was going to hang out until I could absolutely run over to go see her myself. So honestly, the best case happened for everything. She was born without complications, just under 7 pounds. And she actually, I remember hearing her cry. She just yelled out, almost like, I'm in your world, you know? And it was the best thing because I wouldn't hear her voice for almost another like month and a half after that. And she was taken, she was intubated, and then she was brought back to me. And I was afraid to touch her. I remember the doctor, or it's probably the RT, the respiratory therapist that was there. He was like, you can touch her. You can like you know, put your hands on her, and it was really sweet. I think the real shock came after she was, in the cradle, like in the with all of the machines attached to her, and just that's when I think it hit me more. I was taken across to my room and checked in, and I was cleaned up and everything. And I remember, I guess it was weird. I stood straight up and I walked right out of that room. Like my nurse hadn't even seen me yet. And I just like went straight. I was like, "Where's the NICU?" They were like, "What? You just gave birth?" I was like, "Yes. Where's my baby?" And practically ran over there with my parents trailing behind me, like, "Maybe you shouldn't be doing this." And went to go see her. And I think I was just in shock. I've been told that, like, at that point, my husband had been like, "Everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great." And he sees her and he is just almost like he shuts down in a way, because it's just, I've been told, and this is, I believe, so true, the father sees the machines and the mom sees the baby. And that was very true for us. And all I could see was her. And I remember it was terrifying, but also sweet. And I remember all these emotions going through me because, I felt like I'd been robbed of the normal or the typical experience. I didn't get to hold my baby. I didn't get to, give her kisses and spend time just like connecting with her on my chest after I had given birth to her. And that's okay. It just wasn't our story. But I knew that we were in for the fight of our lives and of her life. And, we were ready with the team, and we just took it from there. She did really well, like the first couple of days, and they scheduled her surgery for 5 days old. The surgery ended up being an emergency surgery because they were afraid that her intestines were kinked, and so just stuff was not right. Her vitals were just all over the place. And so turns out, funny enough, the person that we'd been expecting to do the surgery, that we'd been sitting like with and researching. I know everything about Dr. Shaban there is to know. I'm sure I'm not the only mother who, I mean, I can tell you where he did all of his everything. And then in comes this new doctor because he was at a conference because she was doing so well. He was like, he went to do his speaking engagement and was going to be back for her surgery, which was scheduled for a few days later. No, and that didn't happen. So in walks, her name's Dr. Grabowski, and she was a specialist, specifically, I'm probably going to get this wrong. She focused on like the colon and the intestines and stuff like that. So that was her specialty. So they brought her in, and of course she was amazing. Everything happens like it's supposed to, for good or bad. And so she came in and did the surgery on my daughter, and she was doing really great. And then a couple of days later, we get the phone call that no parent wants to get in the middle of the night. And I remember it, my parents were actually here. My husband and I both had our phones on, but none of the calls came through to us. But my mom's phone, that was the next person in line. So they called her. My stepdad, he had to have, he's recently had 2 knee replacements, and the man ran up 2 flights of stairs to come get me and almost beat down the door. And was like, "Becca, you've got to get up. You've got to get up. Call Lurie right now." And so I called. Of course, I called straight to the NICU. They knew it was me, and they launched right in, and they said, "Your daughter's vitals are dropping. She's not going to make it through the night. We have to put her on ECMO, but we need your permission first." We'd already signed all the paperwork, but they needed, I guess, verbal confirmation. And so we placed her, like we gave them the permission. They were like, you're probably not gonna make it to the hospital in time to see her before we go back to surgery for ECMO. So, just be aware that when you come in, you're probably not gonna be able to see her. And it was like, challenge accepted. And so we hauled it to the hospital. I was fully prepared to just drive straight into the emergency room, like through the doors and everything. It's just like, we'll just figure it out later. Um, we made it there in time. We had about 15 minutes actually to spare to spend some time with her. And I got plenty of little finger hugs. And I remember the ECMO specialist that was there. I can't think of his name, but I can picture him as clear as day. Um, Big old guy, sweet, sweet guy. He had long hair and a big bushy beard, and he just looked like somebody you wanted to hug. So sounds weird, but he was a sweetheart. He was just standing there with his little ECMO booklet, and he came over and he just said, "There's a lot of stuff to talk about, but just spend time with your daughter. We'll talk about it in a minute, and get your little finger hugs, and just spend time with her, and then we'll talk about it." And he stepped back, gave me the space that I needed. My husband had finished like parking the car, and he came in for a few minutes, was able to see her, and we launched into calling all of our people. We had started a Facebook page for her when this originally started, because we knew like it takes a village to raise a typically developing child, and a medically complex child. We knew it was going to take countries and countries and countries of people. And yeah, so we just put out the word, called our parents. Of course, mine were already here staying with us, just for support. And yeah, we made all of those phone calls, and then we went into the waiting room. My husband just collapsed of exhaustion, and I just walked the halls. I couldn't sit, I couldn't be still. So I walked back and forth. I think it was like 4 hours or so. They came out about halfway, said she was doing great. And then at the very end, we were told that she did great, that we'd be able to see her very soon, that she was stabilized. ECMO was what she needed. Her vitals were all normal. Praise God, they were great. And they said, just go get some coffee, go to the bathroom, you know what I mean? Like, basically take some time, because you have it now, she's stable. And yeah, so we went downstairs at Lurie, and we're gonna go to just like Dunkin' or one of the coffee shops that's in there. And I remember we had called our parents, and Jeff's parents were in Kentucky at the time, and they must have just put the hammer down to make it there. And I hear my father-in-law's voice, and this is a man that never raises his voice, and he was at the visitor's desk, and they were like, "Sir, visiting hours aren't for another like 2 hours." And of course they'd called up, and they were going to make an exception, but he was just like, "That's our granddaughter, we need to get up there." And it's their only granddaughter, and only grandchild actually. So that was their introduction to grandparenthood. And I remember just coming around the corner and just running, just having them. And my husband went to my father-in-law, and I went to my mother-in-law, and just held him. And I said, "She's okay." And they both just like, we had a whole big cry fest. And my parents came up soon after when she was stable, and then we were able to kind of rotate in and out and go see her. And then she was on ECMO for 11 days. She came off the day after my birthday on September 19th of 2018. And she was great. She did really well. She was stable, and ECMO saved her life. It's the scariest thing that you hope to never need, but you're very glad that it's there. And so she came off, and then we started the process of weaning down her oxygen support. And then she was, at one point, she was the sickest kid in the NICU. We had the biggest room because we had the biggest machines. We were up on the heart floor for a while, up on, I think it's 22 or 21, and on floor 21. And we came back down. It's like, she was the sickest one there, and she did good. We ended up, they ended up having, when they placed ECMO, they ended up also having to open up her abdomen a little bit, because her little body was just, all of those organs were up in the chest, and there just wasn't enough space. And so when they pulled it down to the abdomen, they had to leave her open in what's called a tent. And they were able to just kind of give her body some space, like some room to grow and to incorporate the organs. And that's just exactly what she needed. So she actually had her repair surgery, and then she had ECMO, and then she had they had to open the repair scar again to leave her in a tent, and then she had that closed, and then she was taken off of ECMO. So she had 5 procedures before she was 18 days old. And but she was extubated a few weeks later, and then she was actually, in that time, my mom had come up and down to visit, and they'd never gotten to hold her, so we were able to hold her, and everything, even while she was still intubated. And it was a really, really sweet moment. And then my mom had ended up having a stroke because of all of the it's all the stress, you know. This is stressful. And she was in the hospital here in Chicago for over 2 weeks. And when she got out, the day she was released from the hospital, Lily was extubated, and she was able to come straight to the hospital, and we got to surprise her. It was on Halloween, and she got to hold her, and we dressed up as superheroes. It was really cute. My daughter was Wonder Woman, and my husband was Superman, and I was Rosie, the Riveter. It was kind of funny, and it was really sweet. So then we got to focus our time on bringing her home, which was another adventure, because we brought her home on, she was on a 1/4 liter of oxygen. So we had the oxygen, we had the pulse oximeter, and we brought her home on an NG tube. And so that was a learning curve as well. And then eventually we changed to a G tube and started all of our outpatient therapies to wean that down. And today she's a happy, sassy, rambunctious 2.5-year-old running around. So
Wonderful. That's we love to hear story endings like that. So it's great.
Yeah.
He's doing so well. And so she's now G-tube fed. Any other medical thing?
Actually, so she was G-tube fed. We were able to start the weaning process, and had her G-tube. It's been a year since it's been removed. So she's completely orally fed. When we first brought her home, we had to get a G-tube, so we had it for about a year. She also had a blood clot that she developed, probably due to the central line in her leg. And so we brought her home on Lovenox injections as well. So we had to do that twice a day. So we did that for, I think, 3 months. And then we were able to stop that. We got the G-tube, and then we were able to wean down her oxygen. Since then, so she's followed by pulmonary hypertension, or pulmonary, I'm sorry, she was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension. She was on medication for that, and she was followed by pulmonology, audiology due to the ECMO, but she's since been released from their care. And then we have gastroenterology. So just the only really thing that she has right now is just due to her anatomy. Sometimes she has trouble going to the bathroom. So the only medication she's on now went down from like 6 medications to 1, and she drinks it through a straw. So.
Wow. Yep. She's definitely a miracle all the way around. She fought to get here and fought to stay here, and that's wonderful. Can you tell everyone the name of your Facebook page so they can keep up with her?
Yes, I would love to. It's called, if you just go onto Facebook and search Lily, Lily CDH, it's just the name of it's Lily CDH, and it's Lily Story Blossoming despite CDH. And it was just what we claimed for her. And so it's now become like a platform for us to just kind of love on other CDH babies. Ironically and very interestingly, since it's about 1 in 1,500, I think, is the stats for children being diagnosed with CDH, somebody from my very small hometown that I went to high school with, we were in the same graduating class of less than, I think, 200 people, reached out to me because of our Facebook page. We weren't in the same friend groups, but we knew each other, and her daughter was diagnosed with CDH, and so I got to walk with her through that. And it was she kept talking about just how it was very helpful to have somebody who, when they said, "I know how you feel," literally knew it. And I mean, through the whole process, it was really amazing. And she's doing well too, which is fantastic. Anyways, but yeah, Lily, CDH, Lily. So.
That's great that you were there for that other mom. That's the whole reason our charity exists, so that no one will have to do it alone, because I've been there. I've been there, and it's awful. And also, you're a volunteer for our charity, and we so appreciate you and the things that you do to help us help families and raise awareness. So thank you for that. Is there any advice you would like to give other families that you didn't know, wish someone had told you?
I think the biggest thing for me was when we first received the diagnosis was I stayed off of the internet. I tried not to do Google searches and, consult Dr. Google, you know what I mean? And I think that would be my probably my biggest advice. But also something that was not told to me, but I believe it with all of my heart, is there is always reason to hope. There's always reason when you've received this diagnosis to hope, for the best, and there's always reason. So.
Well, I'm glad your experience, as hard as your journey was, I'm glad you had a great experience with Lurie. They're a wonderful hospital. Everyone I know who's gone there has always said wonderful things about them. And I'm so happy for you that Lily is doing so well. We really love to hear stories like hers, so to give hope to the new families and the ones who are just diagnosed. And I'm going to say thank you so much, Becca, for sharing your story and for sharing Lily with us. We really appreciate you and look forward to watching her grow.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.